By far the most common topic on this channel is NBA trades. And in today's video, I'm going to be guaranteeing you a couple of players that I think are going to be traded this upcoming season. We begin with one that I feel like is fairly obvious, and that is Jordan Clarkson of the Utah Jazz. Now, there's a lot of context to this, but also it has to do with the player that Jordan Clarkson is and how that kind of meshes or doesn't mesh with what Utah is trying to do this season. So it's very clear by trading away Donovan Mitchell, by trading away Rudy Gobert, Utah wants the first pick in this draft. We've talked in the past about how valuable the first pick in the draft is going to be this year, specifically for these smaller market teams. You're seeing teams like San Antonio, Indiana, Utah really prioritize getting this first pick because of how much it would mean to get a guy in Victor Wembanyama, presumably, that of the level of talent that they would never be able to get otherwise. And so Utah clearly wants to be bad, but if you look at their roster, there's actually a good amount of like positive things happening, at least offensively. Like Colin Sexton can score, Markkanen can score, Taylor Horton-Tucker is decent. I think they've got Jordan Clarkson now as well. And I think that as we get closer to the trade deadline and really, into December, Utah might actually have a half decent record, like not 500 or anything, but not as bad as they want to be. And Jordan Clarkson is going to be someone I think is going to have value to other contending teams. There's a reason he's in Utah in the first place. They traded for him from Cleveland, I believe, because they needed bench scoring. And there are going to be other teams now around the league this season that are going to want that same thing from Clarkson. And Utah is just not going to want to be in a situation where Jordan Clarkson's scoring 20 points a game for them every single night and kind of keeping them in, at least offensively, a lot of these games. And so I think you're going to be able to see throughout the season leading up to the deadline a lot of like a first round pick in exchange for Jordan Clarkson, or this young player in exchange for Jordan Clarkson type trades and rumors. And I think that makes total sense for Utah. To me, this one is super obvious. There's a ton of incentives on both sides, and I would be, quite frankly, I'd be shocked if Jordan Clarkson is still on the Jazz roster by the trade deadline. Like, yes, they could keep him and maybe try and use him as an asset into the future, but to me, when a guy's aging and you're clearly going in a different direction, the best time to trade him is right away, because his value is never really going to get higher, either because he gets worse because of age or any potential injury issues. Next up now is Buddy Hield of the Indiana Pacers. Now, spoiler alert, the next entry, I can just do them both together here, I guess, is Miles Turner. I think that both of these guys, again, you look towards December, January, early February, I'd be very surprised if both of them are on the roster at that point of the season. What I'm guessing is happening here in Indiana is they want to be bad. They understand that their roster is not built for, top level playoff contention this season, but they want to at least make it seem like to their fans that they're putting in effort. I mean, Rick Carlisle has never really been like a rebuilding kind of coach, right? And they've got Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, Chris Duarte. Like, they have a handful of like half decent players, and if they can maybe float around 500 into December, maybe they'll keep these guys and they will try and get a play-in spot, and they won't prioritize that first overall pick as much. But really, I think it's just an on the surface thing, and both of these guys are going to end up being moved. Now, there's of course possibilities where they get moved together, specifically to LA, but I think in general, like, if LA doesn't jump on that, we're going to get to them later. If they don't jump on what I think is a very reasonable trade for them, which is Russ to first in exchange for Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, they don't jump on that. Like, I think there are going to be other teams around the league that are going to be really interested in both of these guys. Buddy Hield is a professional scorer. He can score the ball. He's almost a 40% three-point shooter for his career. And yeah, he's not great defensively, but there are going to be a lot of teams, just like with the Jordan Clarkson trade we talked about in the first entry, like, teams need scoring, especially off the bench. Teams need shooting, and they need spacing, especially as guys start to get hurt. And Indiana's going to be a team that I think teams are going to be calling all year long about these two guys. And Miles Turner as well. I mean, I think that his fit in LA is pretty interesting, but really on any roster, I mean, his ability to space the floor and protect the rim is a really intriguing fit, because there's really no limitations on where he could possibly end up, because he fits so well in so many different places. Now, it is a little bit weird that, Hield's been moved multiple times in his career. Miles Turner has been available in Indiana for a couple of years, and they've never moved him. And so maybe if I'm like a contending team and I'm trading for these two guys, I'm a little bit nervous about the fact that it seems like they're always available, yet in this case for Miles Turner, at least specifically, they never seem to actually get traded. Like, that would definitely be kind of a downside for me. But ultimately, I think both of these guys are definitely going to get moved as we get closer to the deadline, unless like Halliburton is awesome and they can defend, and Rick Carlisle does Rick Carlisle things, and all of a sudden they're like a middling defensive team but a half decent offensive team, and suddenly they're like pushing for a play-in spot in the East. I don't think that's the plan, but there's a possibility, I guess, that happens, and then they ultimately keep these guys. But I think they're both certainly going to be moved by the deadline. And spoiler alert, I really think that the Lakers thing is going to happen as we get now to our fourth entry injury, and that player is Russell Westbrook. I've tried to think about it for weeks. Like, what's the scenario here where the Russ thing works? Like, what does it look like when Russell Westbrook is on the Lakers and they're a successful, like, championship contending basketball team? What does that look like? And I can't find it. I can't figure it out other than, like, him. We've talked about this in other videos. Other than him doing, like, the things that he's never done, like cutting off the ball and being aggressive and engaged defensively and running the second unit really well and being, lowering his turnovers, like all these things we've talked about. Unless that happens, which he's never shown that he's going to, there's just no path to success with Russell Westbrook on this roster. And so that trade of Russ and the 27, the 29 picks to Indiana in exchange for Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, again, also on the list, I think could save their season. Like there's no point in doing anything right now if you're LA if you're not contending. Like if you're not going to contend, which I don't think this is a contending roster right now, then you might as well just not try. Like LeBron's getting older, Anthony Davis is hurt all the time. You already owe all these picks. Like you kind of have to go one way or the other. And I think the one direction to go here would be to trade those two first, Russell Westbrook, get rid of the salary, just get rid of the stench of the Russell Westbrook trade, and have Miles Turner, Buddy Hield. Those guys are great fits on this roster. Like the spacing that Hield provides. Miles Turner is almost a perfect fit alongside Anthony Davis. There's so much versatility there that suddenly I would look at this roster so much differently. Yes, you'd have to rely more on LeBron, as a primary creator, especially, the bench lineups where LeBron isn't on the floor. They're going to be tough, but that's going to be the case anyway. And Hield arguably, honestly, might be a better offensive fit at that point anyway, of being a little bit of a creator and someone you can count on offensively when LeBron isn't on the floor than Westbrook is. And I think you have to rip the Band-Aid off and you have to make that move. Apparently they've been very, very close at certain points in the offseason, but ultimately decided to go into this season with Russ on the roster. I just don't see how you can do that for very long. Like the margins are super, super thin here. And if we get 3 weeks into the year and the Lakers are like 3-9, I really can't see a scenario in which Russell Westbrook is still on this roster. Then we get to the last one. And this is one that I kind of would have put on this list a couple of weeks ago, but certainly more recent events have made it a little bit more clear that I don't think Draymond Green is going to be on this team by the end of the season. Now, whether that be, in the offseason or whatever the case may be, I'm really not sure. But even before the whole altercation with Jordan Poole and everything, I think it started to become clear that Draymond's time with the Warriors is limited. And I'm specifically saying that he's going to get traded because of how I think the mechanics of that are ultimately going to work when he does decide to leave Golden State, which again, I think is going to be this year. Now, I'd be really, really surprised if they traded him directly as a result of the Jordan Poole thing, just because he is still a valuable player to them. And like, this is a team that won the title last year, and Draymond is still a really critical part of that. And to just randomly trade him and one, find a trade partner for him, which I don't think would be super easy, and two, be able to reintegrate the pieces you get back in exchange for it would be too messy of a situation. Granted, the situation is messy as it is between him and Jordan Poole, and I don't really know, how you remedy that either. Maybe you trade Poole, I'm not sure. But the Draymond thing specifically, let's just say the Golden State has a fine year this year, they win 50 games, whatever, but they don't win the title, right? Like maybe they get to the conference finals or they get to the second round, whatever the case may be. I think Golden State's ready to move on from Draymond. I really, really do. They've clearly been building other pieces on this roster to try and do some of the Draymond stuff. Like, he's such a unique player, but they have other guys that are big and can pass a little bit, can score a little bit, and can defend really well and are versatile. You think about Kuminga, you think about Wiggins. Like, they have other guys that can do some Draymond stuff. And if he was to leave, I think they're at least relatively prepared for that and prepared for to continue to try and contend even without him. And if he was to leave, think about Draymond's career. Draymond has been a part of arguably the most successful franchise in professional sports for the entirety of his career. Like, the time span in which Draymond came into the league to now, for the most part, Golden State has been winning. They've been winning every single season. And so the idea that he would go somewhere else in free agency, his contract is up at the end of the season. He can opt out of a player option that I think he will opt out of. The idea that he's going to go and sign in Detroit for like $25 million a year, to me, doesn't really make a ton of sense unless their offer is just so much higher and he really wants to prioritize the money because of all the winning he's already done in his career. We think about a guy that's had so much success in college and at the NBA level to go and play for a Detroit team that hasn't proven anything, and maybe by next year they will have proven something. But I think realistically what's going to happen is he's going to opt out of that option and he's going to want to go to a contender. Like, he's going to want to go to Miami or Philly or the Lakers or the Clippers or whatever the case may be. And that ultimately, that mechanic is going to be a sign and trade. Like, he's going to get a significant offer and the Warriors are going to figure out a way to sign and trade him, get assets assets back in exchange as you know, kind of compensation for getting him to the team that he wants to go in a sign and trade. We've seen it with guys like Jimmy Butler in the past where they're like, I want to go here, and that team is fine with that because they get stuff back. I think ultimately that's the path we're leading down for Draymond, because really, if you look kind of and read between the lines of the last couple of years, I think Golden State's been preparing for this. I think they understood that Draymond and the miles that he puts on his body and the way that he plays, ultimately he was going to break down at some point, and he's become such a critical piece of what they do that they needed to find ways to replace that when that ultimately happened, and that the longevity of Steph and Clay is ultimately going to be longer than what Draymond's is in terms of a useful championship caliber player, and they've been preparing for this, and I think that the Jordan Poole situation has probably just accelerated that, and now as a result, I'd be pretty surprised if once we got to next off season, Draymond Green was not on a different team. Now, like I said, there's two scenarios, one of which doesn't make sense for this video, which is him signing as a free agent. The other, which I think is probably going to happen, would be a sign and trade situation where Draymond ends up on a contender just simply because of the way his career has gone so far and the success that he's become accustomed to. That is my list. Let me know down in the comment section below who else you would 100% guarantee getting traded this season or the following offseason. I'm really interested to see those answers. I can't wait for the season to start. You guys know that I love all the different, you know, kind of mechanics of the way the league works, especially as it relates to trades. So I'm interested to see your comments in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching the video, and I'll see y'all next time.